All right, great. The first topic is regarding test coverage for the multi-part re-upload fix. A lot of work was done on multi-part uploads to avoid leaking data and index entries if a specific part is uploaded more than once. That merged for Reef but doesn't have test coverage to check for orphans. So there's a tracker issue for that, and Eric volunteered to work on it. So I think we just want to decide exactly what form that test coverage should take. One of the suggestions was just to write a work unit, just a shell script. Oh, hi, Matt. We just started talking about test coverage for the multi-part re-upload work.
Cool.
The initial idea was just a work unit script that did some multi-part uploads with re-uploads, and then did some scanning of Rados for leaked Rados objects and scanning the bucket index for leaked entries.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I did when I was doing it by hand. So that makes sense to me.
Okay. I think that would be the simplest thing to do just to get coverage for that PR. More generally, there's an idea to scan for orphans after every RGW verified job. But that wouldn't, that would only cover like orphaned Rados objects and not the index entries. So I think that would be less useful in this particular case.
Yeah, I wonder. I don't know why, but whenever I hear that idea about scanning for orphans after everything, every job, I sort of wonder if we might have. Maybe it would be more tractable to have a special, a particular workflow that checks for orphans, or.
I mean, I do know that on large sites, which tends to be where people want to clean up orphans, orphan list does take quite a while to run. But I'm wondering at the scale of these tests. I mean, are we creating hundreds of objects typically? I don't know that it would be that slow to add that onto the job.
Yeah, that's a good question. We have a specific job right now. I think it's under RGW tools that does uses the orphan and gap list tools, and that does take quite a while. But
maybe we could focus on enriching that sort of job to have more varied workloads to just do other than running just our straight tests, and we can keep them decoupled. Would be a more efficient strategy.
Possibly, yeah, but it wouldn't give us as much coverage. I think it would be valuable to catch issues from any of our testing. And I mean, the idea, at least with S3 tests, is that it's cleaning up all of the objects and buckets that it's testing. And so as long as we run garbage collection before scanning for orphans, then I would assume that there would not be that much to scan. But I do think it's fine to treat that as a separate task than just testing for multi-part re-upload.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm really concerned is what Eric is describing, right? Is making an adjustment that makes everything substantially higher overhead.
Yeah. I mean, could we do it stochastically? So like 10% of the RGW verify things chosen at random, just choose a random number in the script, run it. So we'll catch things ultimately, but won't add. If there is an overhead issue, it won't add to it consistently.
Yeah, that's an option.
Yeah, that sounds appealing.
Maybe the first step would just be doing GC and scanning for orphans and just seeing how long that takes before merging.
Right. Yeah. I believe the RGW orphan list test that's run currently exercises things quite a bit. I mean, it does S3, it does Swift, but I'd have to look and remind myself what the scale of objects, of how many objects there are in it is. But it does try and exercise every type of object possible. So
Interesting. Okay. Well, do you think that at least for testing multi-part re-uploads, it would be enough just to change that test to add re-uploads?
oh, I see what you're saying. Maybe.
Although
Yeah,
I think we would still need to scan the index for orphaned index entries, which I don't think is covered in with the orphan tool.
do we have any kind of tooling that which does that? I'm trying to think. Shoot. Does any kind of tooling currently look for orphaned bucket index entries?
Not that I'm aware of. I feel like we would have to do a BI list and
Right. Uh-huh.
have knowledge about what's expected to be there.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I think a dedicated test script is probably still the easiest way to do that.
I mean, it might have to even go beyond the BI list. It might have to read in the manifest from the head object as well. Well, no, never mind. I'm getting into orphan list territory. Never mind. It would
Yeah,
be enough to look to
the
see if the head object is there. That should be enough.
okay. Right, and like the bucket index for multi-part uploads would have index entries for each part until the multi-part complete happens, and then it should clean everything up.
Right.
So maybe just scanning for the multi-part entries could be enough for the script.
Uh-huh. Well, that makes sense. Although ultimately it might be nice to have a tool which, is the correlate to RGW orphan list, which would quickly scan a bucket index and let us know if it finds any issues.
I would enjoy the experience, the existence of such a technique.
So, I mean, I'm happy to add that to my agenda. I mean, I feel like I've gotten. Well, maybe not. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I'm happy to kind of add that to my to-do list.
All right. Yeah, I think the most important part for Reef at least is just covering the multi-part re-upload case. So I would definitely start with that.
Got it. And that's definitely a case where excess incompleted multi-part upload components appear in the bucket index, right?
I believe that
I don't think it's the bucket index. I think it's that they remain in the RADA spools.
okay,
Oh,
I had assumed that it was both.
okay.
There might be some damage. It's both. I might have what it was, but it isn't visible in the ordinary operation.
But after the re-upload finally succeeds, we should not find any entries in the bucket index, and we should not find any objects in the data pool. Is that a true statement?
So it would be the multi-part complete step at the very end that should clean up all the index entries.
And the re-upload achieves that. The re-upload process should achieve that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I think I understand the issue then.
Okay, great. So the test script, I assume, would just, for one or more buckets, or one bucket, I guess, do a multi-part upload with a few parts and upload one of those parts several times, and then do a multi-part complete and scan the index and pool for orphans.
Sure. And is there a way to force the re-upload?
Uh,
I mean, do you stop it partway through and then
the API, well, the API, and yes, well, I mean, if you did it in Photo 3, it's trivial. I can send you a script that does it
okay.
under your control.
right. The Boto 3 APIs have separate calls for like init multi-part and then
Okay.
upload with a part ID. And so you could just upload the same part ID several times before either doing multi-part complete or multi-part abort.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what the existing tests do.
Got it. Okay. So I'm gonna have to polish up my Python skills.
Okay, yeah, there's definitely lots of S3 tests that do this stuff. So I could find
Okay.
links and share those.
Okay. So that's okay. I've dabbled in this Python stuff before, in these Python tests before, so I should be good. Yeah, if you could just send me your script, Matt, I'd appreciate it.
Will do. But one thing that I think you should mention was that you should also test abort multi-part. Same thing happened there.
Okay.
All right. So as an action item, I can update this tracker issue 58780 with some of the details of the test plan, just to make sure those don't get lost.
Okay.
Any other thoughts on this? All right, great. I see that Shilpa has added a topic about archive zone.
Hi. Yes. So the topic is about the Inditex request. And this one is a long-standing request where the archive zone, where they are saying that the archive zone generates a new version, even if only the metadata of the object has changed, and not really the contents of the object itself. So a very naive approach would be, to like compare the new versions, the new object versions, checksum with the existing versions that are already existing, and decide to discard or keep it. But we know that it's going to be a very costly operation. Is this even something that we should consider solving at all, especially since we already have Matt's archive zone, I think it was life cycle policy, which sort of helps us expire the objects, and we can keep the number of objects in control on archive zone.
Well, that's interesting. Well, I've been thinking about this for of late. I sort of think as a quick fix, it's not a great idea.
Yeah.
it occurs to me that, and I brought this up to a couple of people, and it's been thought of before that at some stage we consider a content addressable representation for objects in Rados, either perhaps as an option rather than a replacement for what we currently do. But there are a couple of benefits that might have. One of them is it might increase the information density in the object names in Rados, which would be convenient. But I mean, if you had some block-based content addressable block scheme for largest objects in the entire, say, bucket, or a group or some other way of notation, then you would it was and used our existing techniques for sharing objects representations. It seems like you could get a fairly flexible dedupe system if you use large block sizes like current stripe size. It would trivially handle the reupload cases, and then it wouldn't be specific to a particular buckets and things like that, and the object with the same name, etc.
Right. So for this archive zone case, it would keep creating new versions for each change, but each of the versions would share the actual object data since it's the same.
Precisely so.
Yeah, my intuition is that, I mean, it seems like they do actually want to create new versions when the metadata changes. Otherwise, they just won't have a record of the current metadata.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
If we actually gave them what they want, they would be angry.
Yeah, because there are things like setACL, which only change metadata, and if we don't replicate that to the archive zone, then it wouldn't have the most recent copy of the object.
Right.
Sort of tangentially, in our downstream discussions, like product management level discussions, and above that, there's a substantial interest in relying more rather than less on archive zone. So I think that perspective justifies looking at long-term data reduction rather than treating it as some kind of a hack or a point fix.
Okay. Yeah. If we want to further discuss on this, and since this is probably downstream related, I could add this as a topic for our Monday meeting discussion.
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. On the agenda, I added a link to a Trello card that's been on the upstream Ceph backlog for a long time. Yehuda is really keen on this, but nobody has kind of proposed a design for it, really.
What was he proposing? Was he putting
just dedupe?
Dedupe. Okay, that's great.
Dedupe for RGW.
Intriguing. I think that's good.
Cool. Okay. Thanks.
He does. I mean, to be clear, he has no intention of implementing it. But if we want to resurrect it, I'm excited to find out that it's something we talked about before. But in terms of the something that or Friedman brought to me was actually research by Gabby Bananic that he proved that he seemed to have proved that if we had a content addressable Rados object names that were such particular such that we were not relying to the current extent on these long identical prefixes, that we could improve the efficiency of Rados lookup substantially. for what that's worth.
Okay, yeah, I'm trying to think about how that would look, and I guess that would have to be cataloged in the RGW object manifest. Like you would have to have a list of the hashes in order to look up each of the tail objects.
Yeah, I think that's exactly correct. You'd have a block map in there.
Okay. Yeah, we'd have to think about how that would scale to really big objects. We get some compression just by relying on numbering of object names currently. But yeah, I think this is a great idea, and rather than adding a bunch of special cases to Archive Zone, this would be a much more generally useful feature.
Yeah, I just thought that's right. Yeah, I would actually like to make it more generic than just Archive Zone specific, because I think we're already doing a lot of things that's changing the semantics for multi-site for Archive Zone alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting. Let's talk about it further and work. I mean, you raised a couple of some interesting points. There's other dimensions to this, right? Block based versus fingerprinting, other techniques. But I think we should explore it. If objects were getting very large, we could perhaps do some kind of scaling factor for the chunk sizes or things like that. Or maybe that would be useful. Or maybe it would reduce dedupe accuracy. But for what I was thinking along the lines of was something with more large chunks, like maybe stripe chunks. And if we, I think my presumption there is that in such a scheme what we're doing is eliminating identical objects. We're not doing it. We're not seeking aggressive common blocks. But different strategies probably coexist.
Matt, I don't completely follow you. Would you mind putting your thoughts down on the card?
Sure, that's fine.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think if we're interested in pursuing this, maybe starting a discussion on the upstream mailing list about kind of design ideas to start with.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Any other topics for the agenda? Let's call it here then. Thanks, everybody.